I'll show up. I'll do that.
Ray has been texting me nonstop between yesterday and today.
Really?
Well,
What
'cause
do you do on that?
he's
I should
reviewing
have,
all the documents
it's just,
super carefully.
it's
It's his
being
first
recorded.
meeting. I mean, I appreciate the
okay.
thoroughness, but instead of waiting till he'd had his whole list, like yesterday coming like, hi, I know it's
Oh.
blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yes, we do it. Yeah, so it's been bits and pieces, but appreciate the preparation.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're just setting up.
folks here that we know are going to be here. Welcome to the September 25th, 2024 Bar Large Meeting. We're in the public meeting room at 2 George Street. My name's Trey Watkins. I'll be serving as the chairman this afternoon. The other board members present this afternoon are Jay White. Jay is recusing himself on a number of items today, B2, B5, B7, and B8. We have Mr. James Metters. Eddie Bello is also here. Eddie is recusing himself on item B7. And then Eddie Fava is joining us, and will be reviewing item B7 so that we have a quorum. City staff present are B.B. Wortham Galvin, who's our city architect, Lawrence Courtney, our staff architect, and Brad Thomas, our staff architectural planner. Also present today are city's legal counsel. Julia Copeland's here as the city attorney, along with Hayward Dremel, who is the BAR attorney. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation. That includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply just need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during their presentation. Applicant, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston's public meeting channel on YouTube, and your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. We do have procedures to follow during the meeting, and the order of those will be as follows. It'll start with an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and to the public. Next will be the applicant's presentation. This is a 10-minute time limit, or is determined by the chair, with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. We're going to try this today to try to keep everything on time. Technology can always be a challenge, but to try to help everybody, we've got some timers here. So any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, whether it's owners, developers, designers, consultants, should speak during this portion rather than the public comment section. The next portion will be public comment. All applications are part of the public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by the board members. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with permission of the chair. And we do have a number of those that we'll review and have already been reviewed by staff and our board. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded that there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair, and the applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment section. Followed by that, we will have the city staff comments and recommendations. Then the applicant response or clarification to the public comments and city staff comments and recommendation. This response time has a 5-minute limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they do not feel it's necessary. Then we will have our board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation is over and public comment is closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments, and for vote on a motion, the chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion shall correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Once a motion is in proper order and seconded, each member when voting should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. And finally, the results will be posted on the city website, which is at www.charleston-sc.gov/bar. Some housekeeping items. Item B1 has been withdrawn. That was 235 East Bay Street. We've received public comments on B5, which is 81 Gadson Street, and B8, which is 295 Calhoun Street. Just as a final reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced or considered here. So Thank you very much. With that, we will move into the items. As we stated, item 1 has been withdrawn, so that takes us to item. Oh, right. Thank you very much. We need to approve our minutes. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed. Any corrections to the minutes?
I'll move for approval as submitted.
All right. Hearing no corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed.
But we need to,
We don't actually have to, but
oh,
we can. Sure.
We normally do.
we normally do.
Oh, fair enough.
Don't put they're changing the rules. First day in the second.
So I've got a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. You know, technical detail, that's lawyer.
Yeah, Robert's rules.
Yeah, got it. All right, now we can get to the applications. First one, as we said, is withdrawn, so that takes us to item number 2, 995 Morrison Drive. And Jay is recusing himself on this one.
995 Morrison Drive is not rated, dating from 1973 in the historic corridor district. The applicant is requesting demolition of existing building from all the way to floor slab. And then now we go to the next one. This is the building in question being requested for demolition. And then now we're ready for applicant presentation.
I'll say the county owns this building and is proposing to demolish it. It's old and dilapidated, and we've had presents all sorts of liability issues and such, so we've decided to remove the building, and it's part of a future real estate agreement. That's really all I have for that. It's pretty simple.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment? If we do, please come up, state your name for the record.
My name is Idris Live. I think it's a good idea and that we need to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, great. Staff comments and recommendations.
The building is 51 years old and therefore meets the threshold for consideration as a historic building. However, the building is utilitarian in nature and has few, if any, historical, architectural, or aesthetic features. Most recently used as the County of Charleston City Magistrate and Small Claims Court and Hope Center. The building itself is neither architecturally nor culturally important to the city in any way that provides a compelling reason for its retention. There are no staff conditions for approval, and staff recommendation is for approval of demolition.
Any response from the applicant? All right, thank you. Board discussion.
I've moved for approval.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion to approve demolition without any conditions. Y'all ready to vote?
In favor. Aye.
In fact,
I'm also in favor. All right, thank you very much. We will move now to item number 3, 32 Ann Street.
32 Ann Street is a Category 2 building circa 1848 in the Old and Historic District. The request is to remove existing gutters and replace with white commercial box style gutters, keeping the existing downspouts. This is the location of the property. And we're ready for applicant presentation.
I'm Matthew Briggs, Director of Operations over at Lloyd City Gutter Works. We were hired on by the client and tasked with a project of the existing gutter systems are completely failing on this building. When looking at it, we went back, and I apologize, I did not be able to submit the photo ahead of time, but back in 1888, when the plat map was originated in 1925, which was the first historic photo that I found, gutters were non-existent on the building. I don't know if who or when the gutters were put up onto the thing, but what it's causing right now is it's causing massive fascia rot and soffit rot within the system. We also follow what's called the SMACNA guidelines, which is Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning National Association. And based off of the square footage of the roof, the gutters are drastically undersized. We did take into consideration, because it is in the historic district, of keeping it as a half round gutter. The problem is that because one side of the building, each of them distributes about 16,000 square feet of roof space into a single gutter, that gutter would have to be 10 inches big in order to put that up there as a half round. That unfortunately is not made anywhere in America. We have searched, nobody can roll form that gutter that size. The largest you can get is an 8-inch. They also did recommend per SMACNA guidelines that you could do a 7-inch minimum box gutter, which is why we're proposing to do an 8-inch box gutter to control the water and get it down from the roof to the ground in a controlled manner. That's pretty much what I need to say on that.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
Sure, absolutely. If you don't mind stepping back up, we might have a question
What's,
for you too.
what's the material of your box cutter?
It's gonna be 027 gauge aluminum.
And you're saying you couldn't make a half round gutter that's 10 inches?
Not, well, you can't do it, that's 10 inches. Anywhere in America, the biggest that you can go, because the machine only goes up to 8-inch. So even if we did an 8-inch, it would be more of a Band-Aid onto the building, because you're still gonna run into the same problem, that the accumulation of water, it's too much for that size of gutter.
Any other questions?
And what's up there now?
Right now, it's a 6-inch half-round gutter with 4x5 commercial downspouts going to it, which is why we're proposing to keep the downspouts as is. Again, I have no idea who approved that back in the day. Typically, per the SMACNA guidelines, they're recommending 4-inch round downspouts. So the downspouts that are existing are adequate to drain the system. It's just that the gutter itself is just too small for the amount of water coming off of it.
All right, thank you so much. Any public comment? Sure.
Hi, Idris was live. If the current location of Charleston in the building is essential to change the gutters so that we can preserve the building and make it aesthetically pleasing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Recommendations?
Sure. As noted in the BAR review general guidelines, quote, galvanized metal, aluminum, or copper half round gutters and round downspouts should be used rather than square and or vinyl, end quote. Staff informed the applicant that this would be a staff denial for box style gutters based on BAR guidelines. And because of the visual impact of altering the gutter profile on this category 2 historic building, and to be approved, it would need to go before the board. Staff recommendation is for denial.
Any further response from the applicant?
So while I understand the staff stance on trying to keep the aesthetics and the historic district the way that it is, we also have to keep in mind that these buildings that we love and cherish so much, a lot of the architecture and the products that were used back in the day fail on a regular basis. So even if it did have gutters back in 1925, those gutters would have been a 5 or a 4-inch. We would have increased the size to a 6-inch. We would gladly increase this to an 8-inch if we can, but just again, going off of mathematical equations, it's still not going to be enough to handle the water coming off that building. So we have to keep that in mind when we're trying to preserve these locations, because we deal with this with a lot of the downtown, homes where it's like we're kind of hamstrung on what we can do and can't do. But if it failed to begin with, it's just going to fail again.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Did you look at adding additional downspouts?
I did. So a lot of the stuff is already piped in through the old docking station or docking area for the trains that used to go through. They actually have copper culverts that go in there, so there's only a limited space to put it. Otherwise, you're going to be dumping the downspout directly against the foundation, which you don't want to do, because that's just going to cause the water to seep underneath and cause erosion.
Turn it.
Which even turning it, recommendation is to have it at least 5 feet off the foundation. And I believe right now they currently have 8 or 9 downspouts currently on that, so we wouldn't be adding any extra,
Well, I'm just looking at this one photo. It's not up there, but on the music farm side, there's
one downspout and it doesn't look like there's, and I can't tell, but it doesn't look like there's another one for another. I don't know,
45, 30.
60 feet, I mean, way down, way past where the entrance is to the music farm. At
Correct.
least from the photo, so it just seems like you could add a couple of downspouts and that would alleviate the load on the gutter.
Which even doing it that way, because like I mentioned, in doing a 10-inch round down or half round gutter, which we can't do, they recommended 9 downspouts. If we did the box gutter, they still recommend 9 downspouts, you know, at a 7-inch. It's more just the water capacity that a box gutter can handle versus the half round.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Is this a board conversation now?
Yeah, we can move into that. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you.
I can't support a box gutter on the building. I agree with staff's position on that. Also, short-term and long-term, those are not compatible metals with the copper running off into the aluminum. And sometimes it'll happen quickly, sometimes it takes 30 years, but that's not an appropriate match either. I think that more study needs to be put into, I mean, 10-inch round gutters can be made. And you buy standard stock in 16-ounce, 20 inches wide. You might not perform it yourself, but you can. The city put this roof on PD maybe 5 years ago. That was a new copper roof. And at that time, the conversation about the gutters came up. It just wasn't part of that contract. But I think that there's something more appropriate than a box gutter that can be put on the building. I agree. It may not be exactly the right size, but I think it needs to study that.
Yeah, I agree. I specified as an architect, 10-inch half rounds. They're field formed out of copper. They have to be out of a material that's compatible with the roof itself. And yeah, you may be forced to deal with the downspout configuration you have, but a box gutter is completely unreasonable for a category 2 building. And I agree with staff's recommendation.
Yeah, my comments, I think we're required to follow and take heed to the general guidelines, and they're clear. Round downspouts should be used rather than square inner vinyl. So I think we're bound by that.
I agree with everything that's been said. The building's been there a while and it's got very large overhangs, not to say, there's not an issue, but I think it warrants further study. So I agree with staff's comments.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for denial in accordance with staff recommendation and board comments.
I'll second that.
We'll move into vote. How do you vote?
Yeah, in favor.
Yeah, but
Yay in favor.
Also vote yea in favor. All right, thank you. That takes us to our next item, which is item number 4, which is 3 Corinne Street, Unit A.
3 Corinne Street, Unit A is not rated, circa 2005 in the old city district. They are appealing staff decision to deny an after-the-fact new garage door replacement and requesting approval to replace the original rotted out wooden door with a steel door. This is the location. And now we're ready for applicant presentation.
Yeah, as you know, our neighborhood currently has wooden doors, as you see in the picture there. My argument with the wooden doors first is they're not affordable. A steel door replacement costs between $2,000 and $3,000, while a wooden door costs between $10,000 and $12,000. Now, our community mostly consists of rentals for college students, probably 80%. And the owners of those units will do the bare minimum to those properties to make sure they're still collecting rent. So they're not going to replace a $10,000 to $12,000 garage door, but they might replace a $2,000 garage door. Another reason is they're just not maintainable. Like that whole area floods like every time there's any kind of rain. So the bottom of those garage doors will be like 2 inches underwater. The third reason is it looks like, according to FEMA, that we're not even allowed to have wooden doors in structures that are below the BFE, which is what those garage doors are. So the material recommendations for a garage door from FEMA is steel. So we're violating the federal regulations by having wooden doors there. So
Thank you. Any questions?
Did you get a permit for the work?
Did this through Home Depot, and they said they were gonna get a permit, they did not get a permit.
Can you, for my, clarification, you've talked a little bit about flooding. How often do you see water at these doors?
Every time it rains, anytime there's any kind of substantial rain, we're right at the corner of Morrison, Corinne Street.
Is that standing water at these doors or
And, yeah, cars are stalled out all down the street,
in every rain?
every hard rain, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Great, come on up.
Hi, my name's Mia Arnone. I own 3B, so I'm his next door neighbor. I have filed for a permit to get my garage door replaced, and it has not yet been approved because of this whole situation, but I just wanted to say I'm in favor of this because, like he said, every single time it rains, the garage door floods. I actually looked to get my door just repaired, and they said that it would cost the same amount that it would to repair it as it would to replace it. And then when I looked into getting a wooden garage door, it was just completely unaffordable. And I talked to 3 different garage door companies. They all recommended aluminum or steel because of the location of where our house is. It rots, the wood rots, and once it starts rotting, it's like a disease and it spreads. And he said if I were to get another garage door within the next 5 years, I would have to get another one because the wood would just rot again. So. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Hey guys, my name is Idris Fazliyev. Current market price of sustainability is central landlords are keeping up with their buildings. The city of Charleston values aesthetics and preservation. A stair door allows structure security and cleanliness. As a current contractor, open seals attract insects, mold, and more issues, resulting in the damage of the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Oh,
Sorry, one more thing I forgot.
sure.
So my garage door currently does not open. I can't open it at all. And because my permit hasn't been approved yet, I can't replace it. So I've been parking my car on the street, and this morning it got towed because of street sweeping. But not only that, it's just also the 3 of us live in this house. We're 3 girls, we're young. We feel very unsecure with a garage door that just doesn't like lock or shut in place. And the houses, again, as you said, were built in 2005. So I understand they're in the historic district and there's a certain look that you want to preserve, but at the end of the day, this house is not a historic house, and like what you mentioned previously, something that failed will fail again, and I just really don't think wooden garage doors will do it.
Great, thank you so much. Not seeing anybody else from the public. Is there any other public comment? All right. We will move into your recommendations, please.
Sure. 3 Corinne Street, Unit A is one of 36 units in the Corinne HOA planned unit development. This unit, along with all others in the Corinne HOA, received final approval by the BAR on 10 March 2004, with a note that sample panels were also subject to the BAR board approval. The 2020 BAR jurisdiction flow chart notes that a property is subject to BAR purview in the Old City District if the quote structure is at least 100 years old or rated or previously reviewed by the BAR and visible from the public right of way. As noted, this public was reviewed by the board in 2004 and is visible from the public right of way and thus is under BAR purview. And I did bring the drawing set for this particular unit. We still have it from 2004. Good luck opening it because it's been bound for 20 years, but you can't do it.
Stamp on it.
Yeah. The character defining features on the ground floor of the units in this development include wood garage doors on the front, wood louvered panels of compatible architectural character on the sides, and wood access doors on the sides that also align with the architectural direction of the wood garages on the ground floor. Specific configurations and deployment of these elements vary between units, but in a consistent pattern that ultimately match over the entire development. The approved drawing set 4-3 Corinne shows the fixed wood and glass panels on the side elevation that mimic the size and scale and character of the original garage door. The after-the-fact installed garage door lacks the unique characteristics present in the drawing set and constructed in the community that would make it an appropriate in-kind replacement. Including the current applicant, there are 2 additional residents that have replaced architecturally incompatible garage doors without required permits or BAR review. There is also 1 additional resident under a stop work order admits trying to replace the garage door without the required permit again at the time. She is now, as you know, applied for a permit or BAR review. Staff seek clarification from the board on this appeal, either denial or approval, so that current BAR enforcement of unreviewed replacements can be resolved and future garage door replacements can be handled at staff level. Staff would prefer that any proposed new garage door replacements match the design character of the original garage door articulation that is present on all design elements on the ground floor, and look to the board for a decision on whether or not that should include matching materials or just matching design elements, considering that flooding in this area has significantly worsened since the governing PUD was ratified in 2004. Staff recommendation specifically for 3A's installed garage door is denial of after-the-fact approval, in part because it's not just about the steel versus wood, but the divided light pattern does not match the original as well.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, is there a homeowner association?
There is.
There is.
There is.
So should, first off, let me say, I would get some wood and, nail your garage door shut if you feel unsafe at all. And I think that you can just do that if you feel unsafe. And I would. It feels like the homeowners association should get together and come up with a plan for how they're going to handle the replacement of these garage doors and come back and make a presentation to the board about what doors they want to use. And taking into consideration that there's presence of water now, and there wasn't as much 20 years ago, and that it's probably going to get worse. I think that sounds reasonable.
Well, a couple comments.
Let me just interrupt real quick and make sure there isn't any further response to before we continue on this. Was there any other further response?
From the applicant.
I'll respond again.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no problem.
Yeah, I've sent all this to the HOA and they washed their hands of it. They don't want to get involved. They said, we don't want to mandate what people do. So it's us.
What are they?
Kind of HOA. It's the best HOA ever.
So I've been going back with them for 2 months now. They don't want to do anything.
Okay,
And since we have some active replacements or desire to replace, staff desires the board to make a decision so we can move forward with these folks.
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, anything else further?
Yeah, the steel doors, like I said, are just not, they don't meet FEMA regulations. So, I mean, the wood doors, so we have to install steel ones.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Eddie.
Well, there's a couple things going on, and it does flood there. I know the site pretty well. Our office is around the corner. I actually work on the corner there, and it flooded last week when I was driving by it. So I get that it's a big issue. I really don't think it's the materials that are the issue. It's the quality of the door that was replaced. This is the front door to their house. I mean, this is the front side. This isn't in the back. The way these were designed is the garage is what you walk by. So getting sort of the cheapest door you can get from Home Depot, because that's where college students live, it's not a great reason for me to want to approve it, because it looks like the cheapest door you got from Home Depot. So I would just go on record as I don't have any problem with a steel door. They're really attractive steel garage doors. This doesn't look half as good as the rotten wood one does. So I would not, I can't support the after the fact. one, he didn't get a permit, so that's just, there's kind of no excuse for that. But I think I would be fine with just a good quality steel door. That looks, as good as the original one did. And hopefully the ones that the next applicant wants to put in is at least a good quality door. I get that there's an expense, but, that's, I hate to say it, but it's your front door. It's the front facade of the building. You can't do the cheapest thing downtown on the front facade. So anyway, that's my take on it.
Does that mean you potentially get into 36 different looks of doors?
Well, we're the BAR, and we have to approve them, but there was one that was approved originally. And I would think if they get together, if they don't want to get together, they don't have to, and they find one that is affordable and meets the board's, approval, then they could just.
I mean, we could base it on, with these applicants, one that comes forward to us, if we feel like can be approvable, then we can let the HOA know we would approve this particular door.
Yeah,
And I would think if they come back with a door that looks better than the one he put in, BD could probably approve it at staff.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to come to the board.
Yeah,
He
so
could
you-
approve the next day.
so you've got the immediate issue of the after the fact approval, which I would recommend denial on. And then we can just give the staff some guidelines, whether it's steel or a metal door that has, that is closer to the really easily discernible aesthetic of the original. So that as these doors are slowly replaced over time, you don't have a big difference between the original door and the new door that's not gonna rot. As an aside, if it is gonna flood, do not put in steel.
It'll rot. It'll
It'll
rust.
rust. But I think that I think that we should deny this after the fact request. Give staff the direction that we're okay with a metal door or a rot resistant door that is close in appearance to the original design. Does that seem actionable?
Yeah, we would just want that to be made as a motion, even if it's technically two separate motions, but just an official motion on the record about what kind of replacement would be acceptable, which is what you just said.
Yeah, we just like.
No, but I know, I want it as a motion that's voted on, not
Sure.
just
Right,
a
exactly.
discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, they're composite doors that.
Yeah, I mean,
It
there
looked
very
great.
well could be
Yeah.
composite doors. The applicant would like to address more. I think that's okay.
Yeah,
I just say the composite.
If you
doors-
would,
You
sir.
have to, sir, you have to come up to
Yeah,
the
we need to
microphone.
record
Yeah.
what you say.
Yeah, I looked into the composite doors. Those are actually more expensive than the wooden doors. So it's around $12,000 for a composite door.
Okay,
I know that might not be a big deal to you guys, but it's a big deal to us.
no,
Yeah, I get
we understand. We understand. We're just trying to ferret out options so that homeowners in this area know what they can do with consistency. Well, for one, I can restate that as a motion,
So
Yeah, let's-
but go ahead.
Just one thing that I may not clearly understand what's going on, but there's 30 units in this,
36,
36 units. Are all the garage doors the same?
yes,
They don't all have garage doors.
I don't-
Some
but the
don't have
ones that
garage.
do, all the garage doors are the same.
So we could end up with path we're going down is if there's 20 of them, you could have 20 different garage doors in the future. Staff would be just approving them on a case by case basis.
I think what we do here is set a standard for replacement and what I'm advocating is that they work with, and it may not be Lowe's or Home Depot, but I'm sure that you can find a metal door that has a much closer aesthetic to what was originally done. And once you figure out who that is, then now staff is armed with resources to advise future homeowners, like, here's what seems to work. And we can approve this at staff level. Believe it or not, we're trying to make it easier for y'all to maintain your houses as the landscape changes in Charleston.
Well, and our intent is we would submit that to the HOA so they can submit it to
Right.
the
Yeah.
community so that people pre-know.
I mean, it's not gonna be a one-to-one match, you know that. But something that has a similar light cut, similar profile, similar depth of profile.
And I guess I'm thinking that if that door was selected, it could come to this board one time and say, this is your replacement door. And then it's approved every time somebody comes in, as opposed to it being an individual, well, I don't really want this one or this one, but it's close. It's not, like, it may not.
I think that could be left to staff to hash out.
You can do it similar to windows, because maybe there's another manufacturer who happens to make one that's very similar from the first one that goes through. And we would be okay with that.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with the comments of the board and staff as well. You know, I'm sensitive to the flooding issue and the water issues and replacement costs. But, you know, do have to take in mind that it's under from an architectural standpoint, underneath our purview due to the prior applications, and we've got to follow that precedent. So if we can find a more economical solution that still meets the architectural intent, I think that's what's important here. Certainly, we've got to follow the policies and procedures from getting permits in order to do it appropriately. And I would also encourage y'all to be active with your HOA. And we're certainly willing to work with them to, you know, make this more seamless, as it doesn't have to come before the board and can be done at a staff level. So in general, I think maybe Jay, if you want to propose a motion.
Yeah, sorry, I'm scribbling real fast.
All right, well, let's give him a second and see if,
Okay, all right, so I'll enter a motion for denial of appeal with direction that replacement door can be metal, but must be consistent or must closely match the original configuration. You want me to restate that just for clarity?
yeah, if you would restate it for me, that would be
So
great. So it
denial,
is,
so denial of appeal, this is the appeal of the staff.
I would say or more closely matched, because they might not be able to find a door that can match that exact.
Okay, okay, all right, so to remake that motion, denial of appeal with direction that the replacement door can be metal, but must more closely match the original configuration.
I'll second it.
Yeah, you just.
all right, so we're gonna move into a vote on that. Eddie?
Yay in favor.
Nay, not second.
Hey, not in favor.
Yay in favor.
I'm also yay in favor. Yeah, all right, so that takes us to 5. All right, we're at item number 5 now, 81 Gadson Street,
And I'm gonna give applicants a moment to come in because they're
Yep.
coming in from the waiting room.
and Jay's gonna recuse himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, as close as possible so they can see.
And you've seen it before, right?
It's unusual. I mean, sometimes she shows up without.
Okay. Yeah, so I was planning on leaving it for 6:40. But if you run into it like a tire.
Wait, it's 42. It's easier for me to know which one that is.
That's, yeah, any crack.
Any fraction, okay, all right.
Sitting to that, and that's the one.
Yeah.
If you run into the tire or.
Well, but you don't have a form, you can't comment. Can you comment on this?
No, yeah.
No, so, yeah. you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
All right.
Right, yeah. All right, thank you all. All right, we are now at number 5, 81 Gadson Street. Do you want to introduce it, please?
Sure. It's a new construction in the Old City District, and the applicant is requesting approval for a 5-story, 46-room housing development for the Ronald McDonald House, Charleston, with a second-level bridge connection between the proposed building and the existing building. And well, this is the location. And then we'll be ready for applicant presentation.
My name is David Burke with LS3P. We have our client here today. KP just wanted to say something real quick because she wasn't able to be here at the last meeting. So I'd like to introduce the project. And I'd like to go ahead and ask for the extra 10 minutes. Just
Sure.
if you want to get through a few items, or a few.
So well, this will just reset again.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I'm Kathy KP Papadimitriou. I have the honor of serving as the CEO of the Wilmington here in Charleston. The staff are very committed to this. We're all Charlestonians, and we thank you for the guidance you've given us so far. This is probably the largest thing the charity's ever done, and really appreciate your endorsement. So we want to do it well, we want to do it right, and thank you.
Do I have control or do you?
I just always try it, and then if it works, it works.
I'll just kind of get through. We'll start with kind of the big picture. I would say last time the message we heard loud and clear was simplify. We had a really good Part T concept. The execution, I agree, wasn't quite where it should be. And I think we learned that. And I think we've heeded that. And you'll find that I think even when the historic groups in the neighborhoods get up and tell you about the responses, that they appreciated what you said. And they even offered some of their own thoughts. And I think we've listened to them very well. And I thank you for your commentary. So we'll jump into it. Thomas is going to jump up here and tell you a little bit about the specifics. I'm going to touch on some of the big picture and to kind of refresh you on where we are. I've already mentioned the site. The yellow is the new site. I wanted to remind you, you see the image on the top right. This is where the Calhoun drainage street corridor is widening. So the footprint of our building had to slide back away. That project with the DOT is going to be happening around the same time as this project. This was that Part T drawing we shared last time. It didn't change very much other than to say we think we've done a better job of focusing on the public spaces being in the blue areas. You know, we've got one bar that would, so if you think about the Charleston single, the deconstructed Charleston single, you have the one bar, which is the main house, and the other bar, which is what would be the piazza. But we put the public spaces, and I think we did a really good job of showing now public spaces on each end. And I'm highlighting here in this bottom left image, you'll recall we had a laundry room on the corner of Gadson. And the thought there is that they were using that publicly, but we backed it up and put a living space on that corner. So it really kind of balanced the elevation on Calhoun Street. So you actually have two kind of public spaces on each end wrapping the corner. Let's see, another important feature, we were able to meet with Dominion Energy between the last time we were here and the time we're here now. There was so the transformer that's powering the existing building is sitting in the drive, what is going to be the new drive lane. We were all along thinking that we would just slide that down closer to the existing building and let that power the existing building. And we were going to put a new transformer in a vault in our new building to supply it. In our meeting with Dominion, they said, why relocate an existing one? We don't like to do that anyway. Let's build one that runs both buildings. So the way to do that is to put it in the area where we were going to put the one to run the existing building. And the good news about that, it takes that transformer vault off of what was a back of house corner. And now we don't have that much back of house. So we have a little bit more flexibility with what we can do with that corner. So that's actually turned out to be a very helpful thing. There's not a whole lot of major changes on the plans going up the building, so I won't spend too much time on it. The function of every floor has stayed pretty much the same, with the exception of really how we've treated the exterior skin. And the roof form, you'll notice the butterfly is gone. We got rid of that. We have two simple forms, one being the main roof and the other being the piazza. So Thomas is going to tell us.
I'm Thomas Jasper with LS3P. So yeah, as David mentioned in the introduction, I think the overarching commentary from board and staff was to simplify the design, simplify both with color palette and with form and massing. And so we look to achieve that through a clear identification of the deconstruction of the Charleston single, which was our overall concept. To cut back on a lot of the ornamental pieces and branding elements that didn't necessarily relate back to the original concept. And to create a more cohesive campus through both color palette and formwork relating back to the existing Ronald McDonald House. So this shows the change from previous to proposed on that main Berry and Calhoun corner. One thing in simplifying the deconstruction of our Charleston single, we look to break that down into really two big architectural movements. One being the pulling of the piazza off of the gable form and revealing the glassy hyphen that is the projection of the circulation that's running between the two forms. And then to pull open the gable face at the main entry. Doing this pull at the main entry created two things. One, it allowed us to create a relationship with the entryway to the south of the existing building. And it also allowed us to relate that fourth floor porch patio space that ownership wanted to the openings below and above. It no longer feels quite foreign or forced as we feel like it did in the previous design. And in the piazza elements, we removed the butterfly canopy, as Dave mentioned, and cut back a lot of the kind of ornamental downspouts that were running along Calhoun Street, just to simplify this mass. And we raised up the rain screen cladding system to kind of envelop or shroud the open airiness of the piazza, making that feel like one form, whether it's the outdoor spaces or the indoor spaces. It's all kind of a part of that one over encompassing form. On the Calhoun side, we were asked to open up that facade a little bit. And so one of the moves we did to achieve that was creating these long slits in the cladding curtain system at the punched openings to make those openings larger and just opening up that facade on that main thoroughfare. For color palette, we took the black steel accents and changed that to white. It was a suggestion from the board to late in the project, so we literally did that. And we think it makes it a lot more inviting. It also relates the color palette back to the existing building. To further do that, we did a slight change to the cladding system on the piazza to a light gray material that would once again relate back to the standing seam roof on the existing Ronald McDonald House. For fenestration, we look to simplify the fenestration heavily. Basically any storefront system that is floor to ceiling was changed to follow the same kind of datum and proportions throughout. That's not longer changing depending on whether it's on the corner element or in the hyphen. I think this helps kind of create a cohesive language with all of those larger openings. So this is the view at Calhoun and Gadsden. So same with this brick face. The gable face here, we cut back a lot of the ornamentation that just wasn't really relating back to our concept. And we simplified that facade. We added another column of windows, kind of completing the grid on this face so that it had kind of the same proportions and architectural language as that of the west entry facade. And we created a small reveal around this to give it the character of the closed drawer. So as kind of the equal and opposite reaction of the entry side, which is the opening of the drawer. And just so those two facades speak to each other. On the corner element of the piazza, one move that we made in the plan that kind of helped bring some more glass to this front facade is pulled that laundry room program off and brought the more active program to the corner here to activate that both from views in and out and bring once again more glass to that Calhoun facade. David had spoke to the transformer vault moving off of this prominent corner. So we pushed back a lot of that more subservient program and made the massing more subservient to the architecture above. At the south facade, we revisited the overall design of the bridge as requested by the board and staff and simplified much of it. We got rid of the vertical kind of articulation of the circulation along on the new building facade and simplified the bridge into just a white steel form that feels more like an armature off of the existing building, piercing our new building and just relating back to all the elements. As you look past this, what we're calling the bay window element or protrusion through the brick facade is the long stay units. We want to treat these guest rooms the same way we're treating the guest rooms on the north side, just so they relate. And so that's why we made this move. In order to answer to the board's comments on kind of extending that brick, we pulled this material off the face and made it more of a cladding screen element. We also pulled it down from the parapet and up from below so that the brick can continue through above and below it. We added this rendering just to show that relationship that this has to the north facade material and how it's kind of piercing that brick form. At a request of the Charleston Village Neighborhood Association, we added these two renderings, just views looking north along Gadson and Berry, just to understand how the building relates to its neighboring buildings and form. At the entry, we continue to peel back the brick fenestration or brick detail work, as well as a lot of the kind of ornamental steel. We moved the folly at the plaza. We cut out some of the more superfluous brick staircases and simplified just the entryway in general. And the planter wall that runs along Calhoun now wraps that corner and becomes an opportunity for signage below, but also matches the same profile as that of the piazza. So it's reading with those vertical datums and relating to that. So it's almost as a part of that form that's been pulled off of the gable. We also, in response to the Preservation Society, in order to ground this entry face, we added heavier steel members at the corners, just to give it to carry some of that weight of the facade above. Moving up that same facade, we removed the perforated brick off of the fourth floor patio space and cut back a lot of the more ornamental detail on that gable rate condition, simplifying and minimalizing those cornices. The view at Calhoun. So one of the positive elements was the planter boxes that we created along Calhoun Street to activate this street. So we maintained those, but simplified them slightly just to relate to the changes in the architecture throughout the rest of the building. And you'll see we still are planning on keeping the downspout system and gray water retention, but it will now just occur behind that rain screen. View from the southwest, looking on a view of the kind of the main plaza and aerial, and then a night rendering of I think David's going to.
I think that's, everything else is just supplemental stuff that you don't necessarily need. So I think we've got everything that you need for the review. So I think we'll just stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, any questions from the board?
I do have a couple questions. You're gonna kill me about this one.
No.
So, and I wasn't here for the last one, but you set this up to be a piazza and a single house, but you've got a piazza on the north. It just seems, and maybe it's because the lot won't allow you to get everything you want, but it just seems like you put the taller part on Calhoun and the smaller part next to the lower buildings, and then the piazza would be on the south.
It's deconstructed.
It moved around.
It moved
Okay,
around.
all right. I had to ask. All right. Is that your answer?
That's fair.
Okay. All right. So the next question. So I see a lot of pink lines in there. What's going on there?
Inside the building?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
in the old one, you had
Oh, right.
things
Oh,
happening
the
that now
comparison.
I just see it and I just don't.
So
know
what we
that
were
is.
doing before, we did have a lot of red lines. We were trying to bring in the color of the Ronald McDonald House into some of the pieces. And when, at our last meeting, we're kind of asked to tone that down a little bit. We can revisit it. But we wanted to just talk about the architecture, not get into branding and all of that right now. So,
Some kind of signage or something? Is it neon?
So-
What is it?
no. So, see if I can.
It just, I just can't figure out what it is.
Right there,
Yeah.
that is it's a toy closet. And it's part of the story of the Ronald McDonald House. When you come there with your family, you walk in and the first thing they do is allow your child to go pick out a toy out of the toy room. And it's usually done in some sort of a way that it's It's an experience. There's a magic to how you open the lock of the door or something. And it's something that we wanted to celebrate a little bit. We don't even have the design. It's inside the building. We're gonna work on it, but that's
That's just something in the
it's just
building.
something inside the building.
Okay,
And-
okay. I didn't know if it was some kind of frame or something.
No, and this is a tongue and groove wood. That's not supposed to be pink. It's supposed to be a wood ceiling that we're putting.
Yeah, okay,
in.
I got it.
Okay,
And last question. I guess y'all in the flood zone
we are.
and you've got to be high above.
This
grade.
is the height of flood,
7 feet.
7 feet. Okay.
Okay.
That was it.
which is why we have to do the ramp.
Got you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, it looks like each one of the floor heights is 12 to 13 feet. That sound right?
12.
Well, and you need that much.
12 is flood line. That's where we have to get to. See if I can get to the elevations because we have those. There we go.
It's 13 and a half.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Design flood is 13 and a half. That's right there. That's that datum line that we're having to follow. That's where the bottom of the windows are.
And then each floor above that's about 12 to 13 feet.
Okay, from grade to level 2 is 15 feet. And then each one above that is, what is it, 13, 12 feet.
12, you get to the top, it's a little bit more.
Yeah, at the very top floor, I think we needed an extra foot.
But the question is really for me because it's just a really tall building and it's just part of the design. Is your interior demands the need for 12 feet.
Right.
10-foot ceiling.
That's what we're needing that to get all the mechanical equipment and stuff we need in the building.
Yep, thanks so much. Yeah, just a comment from me. I think staff has said this, but there was,
Those would be questions and then.
yeah.
Okay.
But I just wanted to point out that, I believe, well, you hadn't even talked about this yet. so
Yeah, that's what I'm
sorry.
saying. It's-
I'm-
it's
I apologize. I'm ahead of
just
myself.
clarifying question.
All right, public comment.
Justin Schwebler with the Historic Charleston Foundation. Just want to say thanks again to the applicants for taking the time to meet with us and go through the designs. We're pleased to see the design moving towards a more simplified form and compositional language. There's a few areas we would like to see some further study. The Calhoun Street facade or the piazza volume has been improved with the increased percentage of glazing, but we do feel, however, that a building volume of this size needs a higher quality material application and detailing than cementitious siding. We would also like to see some restudy of the cantilever cornice detail, possibly adding some columns to help that feel structured and more grounded. The northeast corner and east elevations of the building also need further study. While the brick details have been simplified on this facade, we feel that it's almost gone too far in creating a sort of back of house feel on a very prominent elevation. The brick veneer could also use some minimal increases in detail across the building. And we'd like to see how the building would look with a lighter color buff brick or even a lime wash to more closely associate the new RMHC building with the existing buildings. A lighter color could help lighten the impression of the massing and of the new building and create a more unified design aesthetic across the campus. But we think that many of these details could be worked out as this application moves towards preliminary. Thank you.
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We also thank the architect for their time to discuss this proposal and for responding to our comments. In keeping with our previous comments, however, our greatest concern continues to be with the need for ground floor activation regardless of the required elevation. The program should be reconsidered to create points of access and a more gracious open ground floor across all elevations, but especially on Calhoun Street. Focus on the pedestrian experience is all the more important in light of the mentioned widening of Calhoun Street, the extension of 526, which will all bring increased traffic to this corridor in the years ahead. In response to previous board and staff comments, we acknowledge the applicant's efforts to lighten the architecture and simplify the design, which is successful in certain areas. However, simplification has resulted in a lack of detail on both brick gable ends that needs restudy. depth and texture are characteristic of masonry buildings throughout Charleston Village and the historic districts and can inform an authentic design that still reads of its time. On the east gable end, the lack of detail is especially pronounced at the ground floor. The continuous blank wall fronting Gadson Street is not an appropriate treatment, and openings should be incorporated to facilitate a welcoming pedestrian experience. On the west gable end, the revised treatment makes the brick facade feel like a detached veneer, and we'd ask that that be reintegrated as a unified mass to better relate to the character of the Charleston Village neighborhood. On Calhoun Street, we continue to struggle with the architectural direction of the corner element of the piazza mass. Similar to the detached appearance of the west gable facade, the floating structural frame feels unrelated to the surrounding context and could be better anchored to the building and the site. And lastly, while we appreciate the enhanced verticality along Calhoun Street, we do still encourage a more generous window to wall ratio with greater window depth to better address this primary elevation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right. City staff recommendations, thank you.
As noted at the previous review on 24 July 2024, the application is in Height District 5 with a complicated context that includes small residential buildings and large MUSC medical buildings. This makes the 5 stories tower over and at odds with the nearby residential scale buildings, but at the same time modest compared to the height, scale, and mass of nearby MUSC Health University. In addition, the board also affirmed height, scale, and mass at the July 2024 review. As such, staff comments will focus on architectural direction rather than the zone dictated allowable height, as that was the basis of the previous board deferral. So the 2 board members who weren't here before, the board motion that went through was for deferral for architectural direction only. That was what was said.
Okay.
At the July 2024 BAR review, board and staff asked for more architectural cohesion, simplification, and a lighter appearance to the building. In addition, the board asked for the design to embrace its key users, children, with a more playful approach and provide a stronger relationship with the existing Ronald McDonald House. Staff commend the applicant on revising the design on all the aforementioned points. The use of white throughout, whether via framing of punched windows or in the curtain wall glazed areas, has improved the architectural cohesion of all 3 massings of the design, as well as lightening the building's appearance and making a direct connection to the existing Ronald McDonald House. Staff also appreciate the change in plan program at the corner of Calhoun and Gadsden that allows for a lighter, more transparent element to engage that prominent corner. The base of the Gadson facade, however, would benefit from additional brickwork detailing. At the previous presentation, the applicant spoke of a deconstructed Charleston single, but the design sat ambiguously between mimesis and deconstruction. The current design provides a more postmodern take on the idea, with the building presented as an oversized dollhouse where one can open and close the gable ends to play inside. The architectural direction of the bridge connecting the proposed and existing Ronald McDonald houses has also improved and is lighter and more compatible with both structures. The Calhoun and interior parking elevations have improved in their verticality. Both need continued study during the preliminary phase. The Calhoun elevation is missing some of the brickwork details, both on the facade and in the landscape walls that were seen previously that helped to enhance the pedestrian experience. Staff would like such details to return. As previously mentioned by staff, the interior facade would be better served by a continuous brick wall from gable to gable. If change in materiality is desired or required, then it should be more harmonious and compatible with the design of the gable ends and less abrupt in its application and appearance. Staff conditions for approval: revise and restudy the Calhoun and interior parking elevations as mentioned in staff comments. And staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff conditions.
Any response?
Just want to say that we did meet with, as you could tell, we met with the historic groups and we agree, especially about the ornamentation, the detailing in the brick, and even with staff. I think that kind of is exactly what we would do next. I think we oversimplified. I think we did it on purpose so that we could get to this point and then go to the next step in the next process. And I agree. I think structure on that column, on that corner where we have the floating rounded corner without glass below it, we're going to need some structure there. So I think we'll be able to ground that. So I appreciate the commentary and I think it's all dead on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving into board discussion. Does anybody want to start?
Well, I mean, I just want to ask.
Sure.
So this is an example of us splitting up height scale, mass, general architectural,
No.
I had COVID that was.
Yeah, so it wasn't a split. It was just that the board affirmed that height, scale, and mass were fine with them, and what they wanted restudied was just the architectural direction.
Okay,
So, I mean, that's what the board decision was. So I wouldn't consider that a split. It was more that they were all completely comfortable with the height, scale, and mass.
well, I'll start. I wasn't here last time, but I compared the two and significant changes, so much better to me. I think the design direction is way better. I like the changes to the materials. I do have a concern and hiccup on the cementitious side, and I don't think we ought to, on a project of this scale, should have better quality material. So that's more next level, but and I can't ask you to flip the building now, it's too late. Because it seems like you'd put that on the other side and have the taller part on Calhoun, but I think it works pretty well. I actually disagree with one of the comments that was said by the public. That pulled apart facade relates to the Ronald McDonald House. It has that same move on it, and I think it works pretty well. So I like all that. I agree with all of staff's comments. I think the biggest thing that concerns me is the amount of blank walls on Calhoun. And I know you're in a flood zone, and you move the transformer away from there, but you gotta put it somewhere, but you got a pump room and storage is right there on the corner. And I understand you've got to have that stuff somewhere, but it's just gonna be a long blank wall. That's kind of my concern. I could see that being worked on next time, but you think about just a block east, the Rite Aid building or whatever, Walgreens. A lot of people hate that building because it's got that long continuous blank wall. And I just want to make sure we don't make that mistake again. But I think the direction, the changes are really strong. I'm not a big fan of the curve but that's just my opinion. I don't think it doesn't work. I just don't know if you need it. But I like the changes. I think they're pretty significant.
Thank you. James, you have any comments?
I agree with what Eddie said. I agree with your comments. I think it's really important to get some detailing back on the gabling of the brick panels. Not a lot, but maybe right where the gable starts. That's right in line with the parapet cap that comes down the side, and then there's a space and maybe something in there. This design certainly feels much lighter than the previous designs. It's just slight. It's always interesting about precedent photos because everything that I would pick up on to say about it may be missing on this building is on every one of these precedent photos. You're picking up details. There's a rhythm that forms in the street by the detailing of the wood windows and big wood sills and the masonry and how it goes up, and the brick gable goes up. Detailing the faces that, and those are some of my favorite shots that you put in there. But if you could really use that as a precedent photo and bring some of those details through in an appropriate size, I think it could actually make the building appear small. And HVAC equipment?
What is it?
Yeah, where is it going to be placed? I may have just missed it.
Yeah, okay. If you, can I? just-
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Can you make it smaller? So that you can see the whole thing.
It's so small, you can't see it at all. How about that? Does that work for you?
It's got a little
But
delay
what you are
there.
seeing is the frame, let me back up a couple more slides here. There is a roof plan that is easier to see. Actually, that one's good. Yep. We're trying to capture as much of the mechanical equipment as we can in that space. These are actually solar panels, but they're to heat the water. They're not creating electricity, they're just heating the water. So that's our strategy. It may push and pull as we put equipment in there, but we're trying to hide it as much into the building as we can. And we've also been directed by the fire marshal in the flood zone now. We can't have things like fire pumps and stuff like that. So we're actually gonna, the reason why we need some of the height here is that we're actually gonna put the fire pump on the pedestal underneath. And it's not there, it's actually there. But
I don't have a page number on here, but it's the one that shows the streetscapes and
You-
Calhoun Street proposed project.
Is it a black and white drawing?
Yeah, it's this one right here.
Okay, I get it. This one?
Yeah, that's it. So it's not on the table right now, but I say, if you look at that top where Calhoun Street is, and then this project, and then you look to the left. I mean, it really is a significant height. And I mean, I appreciate you putting this in there because that's an accurate reflection of how it really is. And it balances off on the north side. I get it, you know, but then you see them jumping across Calhoun. But it's a, if you think about that round and down, that's that little white on the left.
I mean, we built the study model so you really could see it in its context,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's more three-dimensional here. And I think that helps too.
And Eddie, look at the model. They put a
Forgot
lot of
you
time
had a
in
model.
it. Stand up, come around to the front.
Brought models in.
That's scaling.
Yeah, yeah, across the street. That's why it's one.
And it's, when I was looking at that, you know, this is just an exact illustration of that, or vice
Yeah,
versa.
it is.
And I mean, so you do this, and that's the first building you get. You want it to be on the other side of Calhoun Street, and it's not. It's just what it is. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, from an architectural direction on this, I think, we've heard sort of where my comments would be similar to the staff and prior board comments associated with the brick in that corner. And so, you know, I do think as the project moves forward, that those need to be looked at. Sounds like y'all are dedicated to looking at those as well. So do we, yeah, go ahead, Eddie.
Yeah, and I can make a motion. I've got a couple of comments probably gonna conflict with everybody. I'd be careful about adding too much detail. I get that some detail can be added, but I like the direction. I mean, you can be in between in contemporary and traditional. If you start adding a lot of details in there that look really traditional, then it gets fuzzy and it's gonna look hokey really quick. So I understand what everybody's saying, but I think, you know, you'll just need to be careful with how you do that. One other thing, and this is something that can be studied, but the corner, you're just showing kind of plants there. I think that is an opportunity to do something a little better, even if it's just paving and trees instead of just.
Gadson or the other corner.
I guess it's whatever the street the Ronald McDonald's house is on now, that I guess it goes all the way to both streets. Gadson or is that
Are you
Berry?
talking Barry?
The Gadson or Berry, whichever one the entrance is on. That's
Yeah,
Barry.
so I do
It will
need
be
to point
Barry.
out one
Barry.
thing.
It will be Barry.
okay.
I want to point
So-
out one thing here.
Yes.
So this is not our property.
Okay.
From here forward, that is DOT property. They need it for the drainage. So there's actually a pipe that goes through here.
You
So
can't plant anything there.
They don't want to have anything vertical. They said we could do low ground coverage. That's all they were allowing us. to do.
Okay. Well, I get it. You're kind of, there's not much you can do, but I still think it ought to look a little more urban than just let's put, and I know at this stage, you're just putting plants. But I think it's going to be very visible. And as you walk by, yeah, how you handle that could be maybe it's benches. All right, well, I'll make a motion. Oh, last thing is contradicting city staff a little bit. I'm not as bothered with the change of materials on that western facade, the driveway facade. I think a long continuous brick facade there would be tough. So I understand why you did it. So I mean, I don't know if anybody else disagrees with our city staff. I don't know that you need, and maybe there's a better way of handling it, and maybe that's what BD was talking about, but I think one long continuous brick facade interior to the site would be kind of brutal. So I don't, that's the one city comment that I would maybe take issue with.
Yeah, no, mine wasn't just, I want it to be better.
Yes,
It looks
so
this.
study that.
Yeah,
How about
yeah.
that? Okay. All right, well, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
All right, so are we at conceptual, right?
Yeah,
So
conceptual.
move for conceptual approval with city and board comments. Study the Calhoun facade, first floor level to be more inviting, more active, wide open, but and continue to, like city staff said, add more detailing and simplify that corner, that sort of circle, curve thing. My motions always ramble.
Yeah.
So
Just just make sure I'm clear. You said to add more detailing. Can you, what elevation or corner?
well, sorry. So city staff said that too. So it's already covered in city staff. So in the board comments, I was saying, I'm not sure you need the curve at the piazza part. But if it is, I just think that could be studied how that's handled. But that's a preliminary level thing. So.
So it sounds like with the motion then is for conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Should have just said that to begin with.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Then, so on the floor is a motion for conceptual approval with board and staff conditions. Eddie, how you went?
In favor.
Yeah, you can.
And I'm also, yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Right, before we start the next one, we'll let them. Wait,
Hey, David.
you gotta take your model, because we got other applicants.
We forgot all about it.
There is another applicant that's gonna give.
I know, they can't stay here during the.
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
I can take them.
Hold on, I'm just gonna put it behind that lectern.
That's great, thank you, Debbie.
Welcome back.
Oh, thanks.
All right, we are now to item number 6, which is 642 King Street. It's here for final approval.
Item number 6, 642 King Street is new construction in the Old and Historic District. Requesting final approval for a new 5-story building. You have to go back one just so we can. There we go. And this is the location of 642. And now we're ready for applicant presentation, Mr. And I know you have things to hand out, so you can do that first if you'd like.
Okay. Kim Craft, architect, Craft Design Studio, and yes, I have some material samples. I'll go ahead and pass it around. Here. Start on one end. That's good.
Outside.
Yes.
This is at the top.
Aluminum.
At the top.
Up top, yes. Dash composite.
That's
material.
what I was.
Yes. And I've got this just to show, even though clad color is battleship gray.
Okay.
All right, we've gone through conceptual and preliminary, and we're at final, so I'll skip ahead on most of this and kind of get into the details. Contact on the site. Last door clean. Might stop here for a moment on the elevations. Exterior material wise, we essentially starting from the base, we have brick with stucco will be painted this alabaster cream color, which is also matches with an aluminum clad color at the top. The brick in the middle, this magnolia bay is kind of a buff color, and chosen a grout that's kind of a lighter color that really makes the brick more uniform, consistent. The windows are sort of a dark, this battleship gray window clad color. And some of the materials I'm passing around, this fly ash composite material that's some of the details for the cornice particularly that match the same color as the aluminum cladding. Some of the blow up details, fair amount of detail, brick corbelling as it transitions to the penthouse level at the top. Rendered view, building section, and kind of cutting through the balcony side and then sort of a regular wall side and then sort of recessed lower level. And the cornice is penthouse level has vertical aluminum panel in this alabaster cut, and at the cornice there's a T-shaped steel kind of purple details that would also all sort of be this same alabaster color. The cornice is made up of this flash material, which is a really great low maintenance, but also allowing for a little bit of detail that would all sort of be consistent color with the aluminum cladding. And then getting into this detail with all of sort of brick, some good shadow lines on brick. Speak to Charleston's brick heritage and the fields, sort of the zones where we have an alternating brick pattern with shadow lines. This shows this magnolia bay, this buff. It's mostly a whitish, but has some sort of warmer colors, and then the grout color really sort of just picking up on the lighter color, so it looks more uniform and consistent without a lot of busyness. And then some of the aluminum cladding details that have nice kind of recessed groove lines that allow you to turn the corner nicely without a bunch of joints and fussiness. Not too complicated on the window, on the light pictures, sort of have these nice simple pendants. I'm sorry, some sconces at the locations of balconies and along the bottom. And then again, the samples are passed around, so take a look. I'm pretty personally excited about this flash material, kind of low maintenance, and allows you to get a couple details without actually using wood and nice color matching with aluminum. That's open to any questions or comments.
So how does the top floor roof deck system drain? Is it coming inside?
Good question. It's all internal. We've very carefully, strategically, located pipes going through all the wells, but it drains all the way down. It gets to basically we're 640 King Street and 642 King Street have a shared easement that has a water drainage catchment area that we work with the civil engineer. So the drains collect in the middle, go under and dump into the water catchment area. So we've been working with the civil engineer on that, but because we're relatively tight to the lot, we're internally draining everything.
Is that internal? Are they inside the walls?
Yes, and there's a few chase areas where it allows the pipes.
Okay. I have one minor question. The brick selection, have you used that brick before? Is that why you chose it?
Our interior designer sort of in builder kind of helped it pick it based on brands we've used before.
Okay.
More of a color based and sort of
Well, it's
a
just
little bit of texture to it. I'm trying to avoid the machine
right.
cut, have a little bit of more texture to it while also being pretty subtle with color.
Any other questions from the board? This one, okay. Thank you so much. Any public comment on this one? All right.
Sure. Applicant has provided wall sections detailing brick and metal work related to the construction of the building in general and the upper floor penthouse specifically as requested by the board during the previous review in August. We have no issues with anything that has been shown to us, so staff conditions for approval are more traditional boilerplate ones. Condition number 1, any modifications to approved drawings required for code or fire department compliance or contemplated during construction must be approved by the BAR prior to undertaking changes. Any modifications, substitutions to the materials or elements approved at the final BAR hearing must be specifically noted, reviewed, and approved on the mock-up sample panel. Number 2, deviations from previously approved submissions, if determined by the BAR staff during or after completion of construction to be a downgrade of the quality of the project and inconsistent with previous approvals, are not approved, whether noted or not by staff during review of the 4 permit drawings, and staff recommendation is for final approval with board and staff.
Thank you. Any response? All right, great. All right, moving into board discussion.
Well, I'll start. I think and it's nice for me to actually see a project more than once, because I'm only here once in a while. I think the details are great and really, really well done. And I wasn't here for the first one, but I think you've done a great job with development, and it's nice to see things sort of really figured out like this. The only reason I brought up the brick, and I'm not gonna weigh in on it, but it just seems odd to me to have this sort of very traditional, very soft, brick with the way you've detailed it. You've got, one where you've got these, every other brick is missing, and you've got stepping out, and I like the color a lot. I just think, I don't know how successful all these details you went to are gonna look with this sort of rounded brick. That's just me. So but I defer, that's why I asked if it was your brick or, but the interior designer picked it up. That didn't help me. That didn't help much. So anyway, I'm not gonna be, if that's what you want, I'm fine. It's a little contrary to me to how great you detailed it. I think it's gonna lose a little in some of your detail, but that's my only comment. But I think it's very well done.
It's a long conversation.
I gotta make them. I only hear once in a while.
I think this project has shaped up very nicely, and I agree with Mr. Bello that you've got a highly figured brick and very precise bricklaying. So, that behooves you to vet that mock-up, for certain. But I agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
All right. Well, I'll take a motion then.
I'll make a motion for final approval with board and staff conditions.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been seconded. So up for vote is final approval with board and staff conditions. Eddie, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Yes.
Yay in favor.
And I'm also yay in favor.
Mr. Chair, staff would request a 5-minute human needs break.
For sure. Let's take a quick
Not that I'm
break.
gonna keep you guys waiting any longer, but.
Next up will be 71 George Street. Thanks.
Thank you. It's going to go back. I gotta go sit in the room by myself.
believe I already announced it, but accusing were Jay White, Eddie Bello. And Eddie Neva is joining us on this one. So, if we would, we'll go ahead with the introduction.
Sure, 71 George is not rated, circa 1975 and in the old and historic district, and they are requesting preliminary approval for exterior reskinning of the existing structure. First, we're going to show you the site, just to refresh where we are. This is the Stern Center for the College of Charleston. And now we're ready for applicant presentation.
Good evening, I'm Martin Rizal-Pop. I'm with Little Diversified, and Mr. Chair, can I have an additional 10 minutes
Sure.
in my presentation? Thank you. And thank you for your time and the opportunity to present the Stern student renovation project. And joining us today is Ryan Brink from Little and then Scott Parker from Design Work. We're excited to share the further details of our design. And we hope this will be a dynamic, active hub in for the center of the campus, for the staff and local community. And so last time we presented for conceptual, we did not receive a lot of comments, but I will go in more into the detail how we address the comments that we did receive further in the application. To catch everybody up, Mr. Matters and Mr. Watkins were not here at the last presentation, so I'll walk through floor plans and the site. It's located at the center of campus, diagonally across from the cistern, George to the north, coming to the west, and then Gadson Street to the east of the building. From this area, you can see the Grace Church down to the south, Charleston Village neighborhood, and then the larger College of Charleston building at the heart of the campus. These are existing pictures of the existing building as it sits now. These were views from George Street, Cumming Street facade, Believe Street facade, and then this is just a context of the side. These two buildings are directly across the street. The Hauling Center. This is the original building built in the 70s, and then the Hauling Center addition was added in about 5-6 years ago. Scott Parker will talk a little more about details of the site, so I'll breeze through it. There wasn't a lot of changes on that. In terms of a floor plan, it hasn't changed much, so I'll go through it. The existing building currently houses a pool. So we're filling in the pool with a multi-purpose room. It's a double-story multi-purpose room. There's 2 restaurants, dining area for the students on the ground floor, and then it spills out to the south onto the green to the south of the building. These are construction documents, current application, but there wasn't any changes. Second floor houses student government organizations, meeting rooms, and then down on south wing, there is the multi-purpose, the double-story multi-purpose room. Third floor will house the fitness center for the college. Again, no major changes in the floor plan program. Fourth floor will house the admin suite and then a larger ballroom type of space for student gatherings. And again, no changes. Roof plan, all the mechanical equipment is going to be housed on the roof. And this is the diagram of how we're approaching this building. We received demo application for the demo approval for the skin of the building at the last BR meeting. So this is for reskinning. This application is for reskinning of the exterior. Again, these two building sections show the extent of the reskinning effort. As you can see, we're adding a lot of the exterior is being added. 99% of it is new, with just the building structure remaining. Wall sections. Typical around this building, we have the 4th floor stepping back from the building street, from the facade on the street. So we're adding this consistent parapet at the third level that kind of helps with the draining of that roof and creates a nice architectural feature. And then something to note, different from the conceptual application, we reduced the parapet at the fourth level by 16 inches, so the building actually shorter. This facade, this wall section shows this sloped glazing. That is the only location where we're keeping the original form, the original glazing of the original building. The glazing is not original, but the form of it is. Now we gotta go through the previous and current renderings. So for comparison purposes, we have, we haven't done a lot of changes, but the major changes are the board requested a stronger base. We studied breaking up these verticals with a stronger horizontal, but to keep the vertical proportions, we decided against it. And so you'll see in the closer details where we're keeping the header course kind of a little, just a step away from the vertical plane. We also added the vertical reveals into these spandrel panels on the ground floor, and also changed the color of that so that ground floor reads taller. And then lastly, on this facade, you see we changed the detailing at the fourth floor parapet. The next three slides go through the details of the typical bay. This is the ground floor window. You can see the aluminum composite panels. That's where we added the vertical reveals. Between the second and the third floor, one change in materials, conceptual application in this spandrel area between the second and third floor showed GFRC panels. We will replace it with fiber cement planks, rain screen. And then the fourth floor, it's the same. We have a window in the existing opening and then stucco spandrel panel. This is the previous and current view of the entrance, no major changes. This is where you can see this addition of the header cores that kind of caps that ground floor. It seems minor in this view, but we believe in real life it'll be more substantial and more noticeable. Again, these are details of the entrance, the brick stepping back, and then the core bolt header to the door with a concealed lintel system holding up the brick attached to the existing structure. Similar application, no major changes on the George Street facade tower, stair tower, just some further brick detailing. This is a George Street elevation. I'll talk more about the materials in our when the material palette slide comes up. And then this is a George Street tower elevations. And then we're showing the brick detailing. This further helps to explain how we're making the pattern. It's a 1/2 inch reveal in the pattern shown of the brick courses, alternating courses. Galique facade, it's all, again, all the same changes that we did to the typical bay. Minor change at the ground level, change to the composite panel, additional vertical reveals, and then detailing at the fourth parapet. Elevations. And then this view you can see from the street, but it's the rear of the building, south facade, the green. This is where the multi-purpose room spills out onto the green. You can see all the new additional glazing at the ground level. And again, it's the same changes that we've done to a typical bay. That's a view from the Cumming Street. Scott will talk a little more about it, but we shifted this wall, back of house wall. You can't see it in the rendering, but we shifted it back by about 16 inches, so it's a wider walkway. And lastly, this was the elevation that gave us the most trouble. And we received the most comments. The comments I received from the staff and the board were regarding this elevation. Unfortunately, there are some programmatic elements that are locked on the floor plan. We tried to address the staff comments by adding additional glazing. You can see additional windows at the 4th level, or the larger windows at the stair tower. But due to programmatic elements, we weren't able to add modulation to the facade. The only modulation is the brick detailing, the brick piers that are recessed. Again, that's a view of the Calhoun Street facade, the west facade. And the way we're treating it is not really typical to the way it's been treated through different historic areas in Charleston. This is the south facade. And then the material palette, and we have real samples, but you can see it on the screen. We're proposing redder brick. The current brick is kind of brown. Sammy's brick, we're proposing redder brick. The beige brick at the entrances. This is that fiber cement planks. They got variation from plank to plank, so it will give it a patina look, a glass, and then dark bronze anodized aluminum glazing. And then that's the composite panel that's at the ground level, the suede. And then these are the sconces that are shown in the render at each entrance. These are just streetscapes, in case you all had any questions on fencing. And then I'm gonna let Scott Parker talk about the site.
Thank you, Scott Parker with Design Works. So before and after, so the slide on the left is what you saw the last time we were here. Slide on the right, a few minor changes that are being made. We're proposing some additional planting along the Glebe Street edge. Additional planting in the courtyard here. And what I really want you all to focus on and get your feedback on is dealing with one of the programmatic elements, which is that this space has to be fenced. And the college needs to be able to control the boundary when they have certain events there. So the entire perimeter needs a operable fence and gates. And so what we're looking at is two really key points, one on Cumming Street, where there is a beautiful historic gate that exists there. And Artemi mentioned that we're having to extend the service area in the back further to the south. And so we've actually pushed back a little bit so that we can preserve most of the gate and fencing in that location. But there's a section of it that has to come out. And so we're proposing to actually relocate that to an entrance point here on the Glebe Street side. And I'll show you that in a second. That entrance on the Glebe Street side, well, here's Cumming Street. So the fence used to extend all the way to that location. And what we're doing is we're taking that last section that's there and relocating it over here. But this entire piece, including the existing gate, will stay in its exact same location going forward. And I know it's not ideal, but you know, we have a history of relocating really great ironwork in other places within the city. So that's what we're proposing to do. So at the entrance to Glebe, there is a gate there today, which looks like that, but it needs to be widened so that vehicles can move through there. So we're going to reuse the piece from Cumming Street and attach it to the historic home. And then we're going to have a new gateway there that has two arms that swing And we're gonna reuse a piece of this gate that's already there in that location. So I know it sounds a little convoluted, but that's what we're hoping will win the day. And so this is actually showing the existing gate that is in that location is gonna move a little further to the south and will be used to close the perimeter to one of the college-owned historic homes there and create a transition to the large green space and then a smaller sort of private garden for that building. So the details of how the gates will occur and what they'll look like. And on the back side, where the large green is, there's a series of sorority houses. And there's a fence there that's made of brick piers and wood infill between it. So we're gonna take the wood out, we're gonna take out every other brick pier, and we're gonna replace that with metal fencing. So will allow some visibility between the sorority houses and the large green space that's there. You can actually see what the wood fencing looks like. The other big change is previously we had indicated a location for a monument to the historic Black sororities and fraternities that exist on campus. And the college is now able to move forward with that. We met with the students and representatives of those organizations. And their desire is to really follow sort of a standard form of these monuments that is being built on other campuses around the country. So they want to be consistent with that. So it's basically, this is an image that is what they want to see happen. And so what we're doing is we're following that. And the way we're making it fit within Charleston and fit within campus is the materials that we're using. So we're going to use the historic brick. We're going to use bluestone as the top for the seating, and then cast stone as the top where the different sororities and fraternities will be indicated. The next and last drawing is really a lighting plan. So the college has a very standard light pole that they use. They use it on the streets as well as on their interior spaces. So the ones in blue exist today and the ones in red are proposed, and it's simply the same light fixture brought into that interior space. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. To wrap this up, we're excited about the potential of this project hold and look forward to your insights and feedback. And I hope you grant us preliminary approval.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this project?
Questions?
Or questions from the board? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I need to cut you guys off.
Any of the new fencing, maybe anything that you're bringing new is gonna be iron. So there's no aluminum.
When you answer, go back to the podium, so the people watching at home, you've got a big crowd viewing audience at home.
Right, so actually, the fencing that will occur along this edge here, metal fencing there, is proposed to be aluminum.
Just a cost issue.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
The George Street Tower and the rendering. Was it just the rendering that made it with the prior submission and the current submission? It reads differently, but it's said just the way it was rendered, the glass.
The glass, no, it rendered differently.
Okay,
It's
but
the
it's
same
nothing
glass,
changed there.
nothing
Okay,
changed about
all
it,
right.
but-
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much. Now we can move into public comment. Is there any public comment? All right. Those recommendations.
Sure. The site plan received conceptual approval by the board on 8 May 2024. There were no board or staff conditions attached to this approval. Staff approve of repurposing and relocation of existing fencing. And then I'll note here, Scott, I must have misread. I thought the new proposed was wrought iron. So Now, the rest of my comments were related to assuming that the new proposal was wrought iron, so I'm not gonna,
So it is with the exception of that one.
if the exception of the one, okay, because when I was looking at annotations, I was seeing
Every-
wrought iron, so
Right.
that's, okay, so it's just that one element.
Right, that edge along the back.
Okay. I'm sure the board will have discussion about that, but any of the wrought iron fencing should have welded joints and concealed fasteners when detailed at final review and constructed. Now moving to the building, during conceptual review of the proposed reskinning of the building, the board commented on wanting to have better proportions between the base and the second floor. While the existing concrete structure is a contributing factor to the shorter ground floor, the applicant has made subtle revisions to the facade related to the color and proportion of the muntins, metal panel headers, and brick window bases that improve the presence of the ground floor and its relationship to the fenestration of the floors above. Applicant also revisited the elevation at the corner of George and Cumming Street as directed by both board and staff. The original building did not acknowledge the prominence of this facade's position at George and Cumming, and applicant therefore has inherited back of house program, which is dictating the necessity of blank wall area. The continued attempts to work around back of house elements and provide fenestration as requested is noted, but in this iteration does not result in a well-composed facade. Given the program challenges and plan, staff would rather see a well-composed blank facade with interesting brickwork and pier articulation borrowed from the main facade than random patterns of windows. Staff recommend another restudy of this facade that follows applicant's own precedents of 44 George Street and 61 State Street. Staff approved the material board shown on sheet 54. Staff conditions for approval. Restudy of the elevation at the corner of George and Cumming Street for a well-composed facade with brickwork and pier articulation in the blank wall. And staff recommendation is for preliminary approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff.
Thank you. Any response from any of y'all to these comments?
Yeah, I did have a response. We really appreciate staff's time and direction and guiding us through the process. And as mentioned earlier, we are of course don't have any objection working with the staff on that rear side.
Great, thank you so much. All right, moving into our board discussion.
I'll start, because I was here last time, and as the applicant referenced, there weren't an awful lot of comments. You inherited this structure and where things were programmatically, a lot of things we had to deal with. Seemed like the biggest stumbling block at the last meeting was the Cumming Street facade, which you made an attempt to address, but I would agree with staff that I think it'd probably be more attractive to happen to some of your precedents than maybe punching the windows that seem to be random locations, which was an effort to address, I understand, board comments, but the other approach is probably more successful. And the improvements to the material palette and the reveals that you included, and particularly the base element, I think address that as well. So those were my two main.
And really, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so Scott, just to be clear, you called out that powder coated on the plan, so it was on there. I just wanted to make sure because I saw so much rock being relocated, I thought maybe that was just an error, but I would hope when that comes back that can be, it doesn't have to be a wrought iron for me, but an iron fence, because you know, the welding and stuff with true wrought iron is, it's very, very difficult. Right. But an iron fence rather than an aluminum, that's my only comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with the prior board comments and staff comments as well. And so if someone would like to make a motion.
This is for
Preliminary approval.
And staff suggestion of final review.
I make a motion for preliminary approval with staff and board comments and final review by staff.
I'd second that.
All right. So the motion before us is preliminary approval with board and staff conditions and final review by staff. Things that you good?
Yeah, in fact.
Eddie?
Any in favor?
I'm also yay in favor. All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item number 8. Yeah, yeah, thank you all.
For you.
He's back.
Yes. No, I just said he's not, I'm sorry, I just said he is.
Swaminetti's.
We're happy to have you.
Unless you desire to, but we just needed your report
Right.
for the.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Eddie, thanks for coming on. Good to meet you. Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Eddie.
All right.
Okay, 295 Calhoun Street is new construction in the Old City District, and the request is for conceptual approval of approximately 300 unit apartment building with retail space at the ground level. Now we'll show the location. Just to orient everybody, and then we're ready for applicant presentation.
My name is David Burt with LSC.
David, do you want more than just the 10 minutes?
Absolutely.
Right,
Actually, it's great if we could get it done in 10 minutes.
we'll start there and we'll see what else.
Yeah. All right. So y'all are familiar with this property, all too familiar. We've seen the negative feedback. Southeastern reached out to us and we took on this project for them. It's a challenging project, we know that. But we feel like we've given a really good attempt here. When meeting with them, we said, look, we'll take on this project as under the condition that we are able to use the design principles of Charleston architecture, reducing larger scale buildings into smaller multiple masses. We agreed that the process had to follow the expectations of the community, meaning we would visit with all the historic groups, the neighbors, and we would listen to them. They did everything we asked, and they should be commended for accepting all the extra work it will take to build this structure compared to the previous design. We started with an inside-out redesign of parking and the desire to make a single building appear as multiple. This reduces the scale and gets more residentially scaled masses. I want to state that this has been an iterative process. We've been through 7 or 8 different versions, and it's been almost a year and a half that we've been working with them on it. So it's not like we just took the last design and started fiddling with it. We started over multiple times. So Jeffrey and team are going to tell you about the rest of the actual design.
Thank you, David. Jeffrey rendering with LHRP. Just kind of dive it in. So everybody's familiar with the site, 295. Obviously, MUSC Medical District to the north of us, the residential area to the south of us, and then obviously to the west right now is parking lot, which could be built on and then long links to the south of us. So it's a very challenging site. It's being exposed on all 4 sides, as we all know. Another thing that came on, I think recently after we got involved was the limb wall, the adoption of the city's regulation of the limb wall, and the coastal V zone that kicks in. So everything south of that limb wall has to be breakaway material below DFE. Everything to the north can be, as we typically do here in Charleston, floodproofing protection. Just skipping over this real quick, obviously this is what we're allowed, 7 stories, kind of a mess. Obviously we're carving a lot out of that. So the big thing that we started with, as kind of David alluded to, we had a parking issue, right? The parking was driving this project previously, the previous massing, which you can kind of see the 2 comparisons on that model up there. So we needed to address that first and foremost. So the first thing we did was actually relocate the garden on the west side to the south. So that became our fire access. And that allowed us to widen the parking, but also shrink it. So they had 6 levels before, we're now at 3 levels. That allows us to open the building a lot closer to the ground, right? Get that scale of the building down significantly. Then we took that, the parking mass, the 3 stories of parking mass, and wrapped it with program. As I said before, the limb wall really made us rework the program. So what was before retail at the Long Lake and the Promenade had to get moved up to Calhoun Street, which is more appropriate, I think, for the urban context it is. And we were able to bring residential, where residential wants to be next to the neighborhood. So that's the purple that you see on the right-hand side. Left is the previous scheme, the right is the new scheme. And then kind of extruding up from there, which we'll dive in a little bit further, but this one really describes what we did, right? We turned a Texas donut into kind of two E's, or as BD mentioned once, a really fancy H script building, so everything is facing outward. So we went from about 47% of the raised area of the previous massing that would face the city to 100%, right? So we'll dive into how we carved that up, but we didn't lose, we lost what, 8,000 square feet or so, about the same amount of units because we lost some retail of that program. So actually we gained units back, which was helpful to the client to be able to achieve this new look. And so diving into the new massing, again, start with parking. We wanted to make sure parking worked for us this time. We wrapped that parking to respond to the urban edge, right? So we, as typical Charleston, we bring our buildings out to property lines. They make them parallel. So we did that on Calhoun and Halsey. And then we started carving that ground floor program up. So we carved mainly on the north and south. We created these deep recesses of garden areas that you can see. One would face Long Lake, one would face Calhoun. And then above that, we extruded up 6 stories, well, I guess 5 stories of apartments, right? So that you see green is how we started setting that back, really emphasizing the lower mass of the townhouse, which is all townhomes, which we'll dive into a little bit more in the renderings. And then step 5, we wanted to further reduce the scale of the building, the height of the building, so we set back the top floor. So all those units now have a nice generous terrace, but that also reduces the overall appearance of the height. And then 6, the last thing we did was take those gardens that we had in the north and south, wrap them all the way through the building, so it feels like one continuous garden that connects Calhoun all the way to Long Lake. And this is kind of the resultant mass, right? You got these 2 E's facing out towards the city with vertical proportions and massing with a hyphen, which is in the green, tying all that together. We'll turn it over to Christoph.
Hi, I'm Christoph Drummond from Design Works. So we're going to go now and looking at the building in relationship with the neighborhood and also with the streetscapes. At the larger views, as you can see, the promenade, or what we call the whole connection on the front of the building, not only goes in front of the building, it goes all the way to 4th Street. So the idea is not only we want to create some public space in the front of it, but also at the same time, we all want to provide the city another way for pedestrian and bicycle to travel through the neighborhoods. In the long term, we know that it will be needed, with the improvement on Calhoun and the widening of the road. It's getting harder and harder for bicycles and pedestrians to move in the neighborhood, and that will be a good opportunity for people to actually go along the streets and avoiding, the Calhoun congestion. And you can see also the idea of a path around the lake. So this actually plan is part of a piece of a larger plan for the city for bike and pedestrian. The same way, the way the building is designed and the way we think about the lake in terms of the flood, and we're not going with those details, but the building is built also to accommodate and be part of the Calhoun improvement and the lake improvement for the flooding of the neighborhood. So all that stuff comes together as one. Next one is a close-up to the plan. You can see on the north side, the widening of Calhoun, which thank God on our project compared to the other one, we only had a little bit of land taken out on the left side. But you can see also the improvement of the crossing at Courtney. And our idea also is not only we're going to try to improve the streetscapes along Calhoun, but also widening the sidewalk and make it wider. On the left side, you see the property from Roper, and you can feel the connection actually that's going to go north-south from Courtney to the water, and the idea of that promenade being there eventually for public access will be an add-on also for the city to access beyond property. On the right side is Halsey, where you see the change from the retail area ground floor to the residential and townhomes. That kind of reminds you of the Charleston townhomes. And the one only access actually for cars will be on Halsey. There will be no other access. Obviously on Calhoun it's not possible, and the rest of the areas is the lake or private land. Along the lake, you can see the 20-foot wide concrete and the finishing and hardscape is going to not be a boardwalk in wood, but actually a hardscape bridge a la Charleston when you see the waterfront garden. And then gardens and townhomes. And on the left side, you're going to have a private alley built there for the townhome access on the ground floor with hardscapes and walls on the left side to give the privacy from and security from the existing parking lot. We know that eventually it's going to be a building or a park. We don't know what it is, but for the moment, this is what we're creating in order to be able to have access to those townhomes in a safe way and not being just on the parking. And also, there's a different elevation between the parking and those townhomes. So we need to deal with that difference of elevation. So this is a close-up of the space, and you can see those hyphens starting to look on the ground floor. On the north side, you can see that terrace coming to the ground floor, and the south side of the gardens, and then some small gardens on the left and right. It's kind of the continuation of the hyphen from the upper level to the ground level.
I'm gonna step back one quick second just to point out an important line. So that red dashed line there is the limb wall line that you see. So everything south of that again has to be raised to be breakaway material below BFE. Anything to the north could be at grade. So here's a first kind of look, and Brad put out a model that we constructed of this corner of the, well, Calhoun Halsey corner that you'll see here in a second, but just to kind of show you the level of detail and effort that we went into the studying of these facades. This view here is obviously standing across, you're in front of Roper, looking back at the building, you start to see how we start to articulate the tripartite concept, the strong base, really simplified middle brick building, and then the upper mass, which is your metal. You can see how the gardens, like Christoph is mentioning here, the terrace between the two buildings kind of wraps up the building and into the raised terrace beyond. You can see the back wall, I don't think I have a laser on this, but the back wall of that recess is about 120 feet from the street of Calhoun.
And that's to relate to the architecture and the landscape. So what we try to do is to follow what the architecture is doing, is the idea of that hyphen with the green metal that's in the center. What we're going to do is create the landscapes on the ground floor and the upper floor to create like a coulee or cascade of landscapes from the top to the street level. And you can see on this section, actually, the way the facade is lining up with the street, but suddenly in the center, you have this wide opening that is recessed. The sidewalk is a minimum of 11 feet, plus the green space in the front is 15 feet. I don't think there's a 15-foot sidewalks anywhere on Calhoun. And then beyond that, you have a small garden with a ramp to lead you to that terrace under the building, which will be basically the way to access the retail and the lobby on the left and the right, but also a place for people to sit down. There's a cafe with tables. So it creates kind of an open space dedicated to the public. Imagine that at night with lighting. The back wall will have, there's a corridor with windows on it, but we can do green walls, murals, whatever it is. So it's going to create, really, I think for the first time on Calhoun, a public space that's going to be interesting night and day actually, and really enhance the life on the street, even though Calhoun is not going to be, King Street. But we're trying very hard to make it more friendly and more open to the public. Remember, that you have the Courtney Crossroad right across from there, easily with the new improvement of Calhoun, that will also bring people into that space.
As we start moving around towards Halsey Street here, you can see that outside corner. This is our main prominent entry for the residents at this corner. So we wanted to play it up a bit more, right? So we curved the corner there to make it soften and genuflect to the curve that it's located. And the recessed space there for the entry is protected. And we start to bring down the metal through the recessed balconies on that corner as well to give it a little heightened detailing. As you kind of step closer again, the base we're kind of conceiving of a precast concrete. If we can go that route, it would probably have some exposed aggregate, bring in the brick colors of our building, brick colors of the surrounding context as well, with a nice defined base as below the storefronts. Could be granite itself. And these are actually built so that you can engage with them, right? So the pedestrian can start to sit on its little seat ledge there so they can start engaging with our building. As we kind of move around again, Halsey here, you start to see how the retail space, the ground floor space there starts to morph into the townhomes. So these townhomes are 2-story townhomes. They are raised up just a bit, again, get all that limb wall line requirements. They are projected out, so they start to bring down the scale of the pedestrian as you come along Halsey, and really starts to genuflect to the neighborhood, the Halsey Boulevard townhomes themselves. The middle is specifically simple, right? The brick is simple in the detailing and design. We do anticipate deep set windows, some simple brick headers, and that's defined cornice on that brick element to really play up the verticality as you kind of see the reveals there. And then the metal work at the top starts to bleed down into these recessed hyphens. So those hyphens that you see between each of the fingers is about 60 to 70 feet away from Halsey. So it is a really deep recess there. Really starts to allow the individual buildings themselves to read. And so it doesn't read like one large mass.
And what we're trying to do with the landscape is following the philosophy of the building what I like about this project, we're not dealing with an apartment complex with no doors. What you're creating is basically a typical Charleston streetscapes of either townhomes, single homes with small stoops, little gardens in the front. I mean, we're trying to recreate what is so well known in Charleston is really the experience of walking down a residential street. So you're going from the retail facade with direct access from the people that can touch the glass to something more put away from the facade. So on the section, you can see what we did also in order to avoid to have a base too high. For example, we could have put like 15 stairs. And then if you look at the example of the Halsey townhomes right down the street, what they have is 4 steps outside and 8 steps inside. You see that all over the place on most of the porches when you go into the house. So it allows you to have a finished floor at 15 elevation, but from the street, it's only 4 steps. So it looks like actually the floor is lower, but it gives you a much more friendly and much more better relationship from the street level. It's not too high, it's not too low, you're not at ground. So I really like the relationship, and it's really typical of Charleston, and the idea of a small green space in front of it. It's about 5 or 6 feet wide, 8-foot sidewalk. So we're basically recreating a typical Charleston landscapes all the way down those townhomes. Even though we have that difficulty of raising them on some section, and we talk about collapsible, those green rectangles, you see those will be actually collapsible when it's needed, on the southern part of the complex. Again, you can see those amenities on the upper level. The idea of those are going to be kind of private gardens for those units, very green and very planted. So the whole idea again is bring as much green and tradition of gardens in Charleston on the ground floor and upper level.
As we move around to Long Lake, this is probably the facade that's carrying the most weight in the project, right? You're gonna see it up close as a pedestrian right next to the building on the promenade. You'll also see it, as you'll see the next view, well, 2 views from now, across the lake. So you're gonna see it from near and far. So we want it to be a little bit more formal in its nature and expression. So we added a lot more balconies, semi-recessed so that the tenants can start to get out of the building and start to interact with the lake itself. The townhomes do continue at the base. The brick mass itself is set back beyond that. So that has a nice rooftop terrace above the townhomes. And in this facade, I think we heard some comments from staff and community that it was long. It felt really long. So we started to break that down with some vertical hyphens, again, some smaller hyphens, so that the top metal work starts to bleed itself down and starts to break down that facade even a bit more. Which you can barely see there, I guess maybe, this is the view we see now, obviously with all the trees. This is the view after we and the clients enhance the rest of Long Lake itself. And then, oops, sorry, beyond that. So that I wanted to point out the recessed terrace there. That is about 160 feet back from our property line on the south. So it is a deep recess. So most of the time you will never see this building, this complete building, until you get beyond the lake.
And in the same philosophy, that's what's happening along Halsey. Along the promenade, you're going to have basically the same type of stoops. So I'm not going to go back to the explanation. But what I like is that this facade is, I don't think you have anywhere a townhomes with a small private yard, little fences with planters in between the unit, facing a pedestrian walkway on the water. I think that's a very unique project. And I like the idea of putting residential on the water, but not privatizing it, but giving them a public win as well on the street for everyone to enjoy. So it's really about the changes we're doing in this one, I think is a great element that bringing residential, neighborhood right on the water in a residential neighborhood. I think that's the great aspect of this project. Another thing is we did mention is the balconies on the top of it actually get wider on the sides as you go down the street. So it's really getting more and more about the townhomes and less about the big building. It's really about, you're going to experience most of this building on the ground level, walking around it. And I think everything between the landscape and architecture is to really make you feel like you are walking into a Charleston streetscapes. And then as a larger element, you can see the recess, the idea that will be the southern oriented open space, which could be the pool and more of a daytime sunny area of the design. But again, with that green metal coming down, the whole idea is to put more trees, more landscapes at the base. We didn't want to pave the whole thing. We don't turn that to a garden that could be open to the public or private at the same time. So it could be a central element that could be a gathering space for people in a formal or informal Charleston type of gardens with the fountain and other elements. So again, the idea is of that landscapes coming down to the ground and making a moment as you walk down those private gardens of a larger public space.
And then here's the view from essentially standing on the dock that's existing there across Long Lake. You start to see how that facade gets broken down by those additional hyphens and a really deep recessed pool terrace.
And the last part of of the landscapes is the west facade, which basically is a facade. And normally, you could see the parking lot right on the side of it. So the idea is we have basically an alleyway that goes from 10 feet to 20 feet because of the recess of the facade. The beauty of it is you have 3 buildings, basically with a recess of gardens. So we're following the same philosophy of the idea of the green space on the ground floor, and also using that to kind of jog the path and not having a long path in the alleyway with a straight path all the way down. And also what we're thinking about doing is the wall that would be along the property for the privacy and for retaining the site will also change in nature. It could go from brick or ironwork or full brick and stucco as we go down the building to again break down that long facade into 3 items with gardens in between them.
And then here's the view coming into town, walking basically in front of MUSC Children's, and as you're heading towards Roper in our 295 project. Again, you start to see the fingers themselves being really expressed, the vertical massing, the separation of the long facade down into multiple buildings. Additional hyphen has been added right between the townhomes where those end and where the retail starts again. And so that's again where the break in the garden will happen itself. This corner is a mid-block corner, so we didn't feel like it needed to be treated the same way as the Halsey Calhoun corner. So we did not curve this corner. It felt like it needed to have its own expression, and therefore it is squared off with a nice recessed balcony in that corner. And then one last view as you're entering town from James Island Connector. This is the view I would see every day coming into town, and then you really start to read those hyphens really well. It separates the building. I think during most of the day, so it's going to really feel like 3 distinct buildings. So, thank you so much. Go back to it.
All right, thank you. Question from the board at this point.
I think I've got all the materials. I understand them and I know it's conceptual, but so the green is metal panel, right? And you've got stucco. Is that right? It's happening that I see it's
At the
gray, or is
base-
that stone? or
At the
what
base
is
would,
stucco?
it's going to probably be precast concrete
Okay.
or a cast stone material.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, we will take public comment now. We had a lot of written public comments on this. Those have been previously circulated to the board and we have reviewed those. But for folks that are here, yes.
Joe McGee, One Magazine, a resident of Holliston Village Association, Holliston Village. Really commendable work has been done on the design. Some great elements to it. I think for me, as a resident, I think about it like this. You're looking at 2 projects tonight. Maybe this isn't fair for you. You're looking at 2 projects tonight that will reshape Calhoun and will reshape how we enter the city. And so now more than ever, it's important for us to have a perspective that makes it friendly, that makes it Charlestonian, that makes it warming. So as you think about elements of this design, please give heavy consideration to the massing and the scale. It remains there. Great work's done, like the design, like many features of it, but it's still huge by any dimension. And probably maybe the biggest concern might be the setback on Calhoun as I can determine, pending further correction of my observations, but it seems pretty close, not quite comparable to the streets or to the properties across the street on the north side. And I think the lack of that setback can create a canyon effect. As you think about this property, you think about the other properties that will be coming down Calhoun in years to come. Let's not lose the Charleston perspective as we enter the key corridor for the city.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Any other, let's see, our groups?
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We would like to thank the architect for their outreach on this proposal. This multi-year review has been convoluted and taxing on city resources, but demonstrates the critical value of the DAR in defending Charleston's unique sense of place. We commend this board for standing firm and demanding excellence for the Charleston Village neighborhood and the city, and we ask for your continued vigilance as you consider this revised design tonight. This proposal represents the first meaningful restudy of height, scale, mass, and architectural direction since the project was first denied in 2021. Reducing the height, revising the massing, simplifying the design are all steps in the right direction that the community has called for. However, this is still one of the single largest building footprints to be proposed downtown, and more work is needed to respect the scale of the historic neighborhood, create dynamic connection to the public realm, and contribute architecturally to the streetscape and skyline. While it would be our strong preference to break down the footprint into distinct masses, as we've mentioned before, we will address how the proposed massing can be improved in a good faith effort to move this project forward. While the townhouses are a successful mechanism to soften the transition towards Charleston Village, the distance between the 7-story building and the face of the townhouses should be increased. This will allow the masses to read more authentically rather than as a veneer and give greater relief to the small-scale neighborhood streetscape. As mentioned in the context of the Ronald McDonald House just a few blocks away, the building should also better address Calhoun Street with more gracious open space and an activated ground floor. Stepping the building further to the south would mirror setbacks across the street in the hospital district and create opportunity for more green space and a more inviting light-filled storefront space that currently feel shallow and dark. We also see potential for more welcoming pedestrian entrances along Calhoun with stronger corner elements. The northeast corner at Calhoun and Halsey is particularly important and should better announce itself as a distinct feature. We encourage drawing inspiration from examples of historic corner buildings that are often characterized by an articulated base, middle and top, and strong vertical definition, and a pronounced cornice line. We also specifically suggest restudying the off-center pedestrian entrance to better anchor the corner. And lastly, we call on the project team to think critically about the building's contribution to the skyline. This building will be experienced at a distance from numerous perspectives, and the penthouse level should be well detailed and add architectural interest in keeping with Charleston's iconic cityscape. We thank the board for taking these comments into consideration as you can continue to push this project team to deliver the most contextual and highest quality building possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. First, we'd like to thank the applicants for taking the time to meet with us well in advance of the September BAR meeting in order to review the revised application for 295 Calhoun. We appreciate that the team has taken a unique design approach with the updated submittal to try and solve a challenging site condition. Our advocacy position has remained consistent from when we first reviewed this project back in 2021. Historic Charleston Foundation believes that the zoning for this site and therefore the allowable building envelope for any development on this parcel is far too large. The height, scale, mass, and density that is allowable for the zoning district in such an immediate proximity to the historic structures on Calhoun, the Halsey Park Townhomes, and the neighborhood of Charleston Village is unacceptable. With that being said, and the applicant's willingness to attempt a new design approach to the site, we are happy to review the application and submit recommendations that we hope will lead to a successful project that contributes to the city's architectural inventory and mitigates the impacts on the resources nearby. We would like to see a full rendering of the Calhoun Street facade from across the street to better understand the architectural massing detail. The street facing elevations along Calhoun should be elevated in quality and material finishes and architectural design. The blank wall behind the arched colonnade on Calhoun Street should read like an entrance to a building rather than a plain screen for parking. Balconies should use the arch motif that's reserved for the interior facing elevations in order to elevate and unify the architectural language of all the elevations. On the east, south, and west elevation, the townhouse form provides an elegant way to engage and activate the street. However, the 4 stories of brick-clad apartments above simply feel overbearing. Recessing the upper floors on these building faces would provide a more appropriate massing as its height increases. With such a large and visible parcel as a gateway into the historic district, a level of refinement is needed before the BAR should grant conceptual approval. And because of these refinements needed for massing and architectural direction, we recommend deferral of the application. We'll look forward to the continued positive progress as this project continues to develop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Cooper. I live at 66 Gadson Street, which is approximately 200 or 300 yards from the development. I'm pretty familiar with the development, having sat through the last 4 meetings last year. As you know, there was a lot of comments then, as there is today, about the size and the mass of the structures, as well as some of the less significant details. And ultimately, these concerns led to it being rejected. So I'd like to commend the developer for this new iteration design. I'm frankly excited about it. Seem to be the only one here tonight in that camp. But I think they've taken to heart some of the comments, and they've spent a great deal of time and money and resources in going back and to square one and starting over. They've obviously hired a new local architectural firm to come back with a really interesting and I think new design concept that I think everyone can rally around. The two E-shaped buildings connected by a hyphen in the middle, I think is an interesting approach and one that, in my opinion, makes the building mass appear a lot smaller. And I think it's a very approachable and inviting design. They've also stepped down the lakeside that faces Charleston Village, and I think incorporating the townhomes on the Halsey side is an excellent addition, and I think it really complements the existing townhome structures on Halsey and really enhances that thoroughfare. Even today's Post and Courier, you may have seen praise the design, which if you know them, they're not known for praising developers. So, but I think it's something that we can all agree that the developer is on the right track. Well, this is the first meeting. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of comments and suggestions, but I think something that was lacking in the past is that make sure that the comments clearly delineate any architectural issues that are keeping you from moving forward in this approval process and provide detailed feedback that's actionable that the developer can take back and incorporate into a new design to clear whatever hurdles that you may present. This is not an attractive intersection as it stands today, and this would be a visual improvement and enhancement to the neighborhood in many ways. And at 7 stories, I think it's consistent with some of the structures surrounding it. Unfortunately, as you've heard, there's a lot of angst around this development with very strong opinions, both for and against, but we can't turn back the clock. Some people would like to see nothing developed there, but that's just not gonna be possible. We have to face the reality of where we are today and try to find a path forward. I hope you're all able to weigh all these comments and concerns and incorporate your professional judgment and feedback that will ultimately result in this project moving forward in the approval process. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Other public comments? All right. So we'll move on to staff comments and recommendations.
Staff comments will begin with more factual context, table setting. This application is the product of a mediation of an appeal of previous denials. The architects on the project have changed and therefore has the approach and the design. Review of this submittal should stand on its own. As previously noted by applicant, over half the site is in limonal, which means that building spaces below design flood elevation can only be used for storage, vehicle parking, and building access, which impacts the design of this project. And finally, the project is in the Old City Height District 7, which means the maximum building height allowed shall not exceed 7 stories. Staff support the proposed massing form, which steps back multiple times and includes carved out portions that applicants describe as back-to-back eaves. Jeffrey knows I think of it as a fancy H. The step backs and carve outs reduce what could be an imposing full block massing and allow the Long Lake side to respond to the lower residential massing of neighboring Charleston Village. Having the 7th floor setback also reduces the perception of the height scale mass allowed by zoning. Staff support the architectural direction of the proposal, which uses elevated materials that have been wisely deployed to provide additional breaking down of the form by establishing a material distinction between base, middle, and top. In addition, having the center hyphen form read different materially from the rest of the masonry middle with increased glazing and metalwork reduces the appearance of the mass. The same glazing and metalwork strategy also lessens the impact of the top floor. The applicant's approach to site work and limois is to be commended. The use of landscape and hardscape respond to the context and dimensions on each side and support a convivial public realm while still providing a clear transition to the private realm on the 3 residential sides of the block. The site section along Halsey Boulevard from Car Lane to Townhouse Interior skillfully deals with necessary increases in elevation due to limois while not compromising the pedestrian experience. The same is also true on the Long Lake section, which transitions deftly from promenade to public path to private garden and townhouse interior. Moving a significant amount of the stair run interior to the townhouses also allows the public reading of the facade to be commensurate with a regular stoop configuration. Staff recommend continued study of the compositional relationship between the balconies and paired windows in establishing verticality and rhythm in the middle masonry section of the elevations. In the same middle section, the glazing and metalwork hyphen suffers from too much repetition. Restudy of the area with more compositional hierarchy and modulation would provide visual relief and enhanced verticality. Staff conditions for approval, continued study and refinement of elevations as referenced in staff comments, and staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you. Do y'all have any response to that or anything further from David, Jeffrey, or Priscilla?
First of all, we'd like to thank PSC, HCM, Mr. McGee, I made that name right? Yes, and Mr. Cooper for their comments, and also just working with them throughout this whole process has been, we do take all your comments very heavily into heart, and we try to respond to them as best as we can. So just to kind of give some clarification to some of the comments, the distance from Calhoun, I'm not sure if we mentioned, the building is set back between 14 and 20 feet from the street edge itself. And then the terrace itself in the middle is even further set back another about 20 feet. So that would put you around, I think, 34 to 40 feet setback. The townhomes, I think we might have mentioned, but maybe got missed along Halsey. Since they are following the street line and the brick mass is perpendicular to itself, it ranges from 6 feet all the way up to 12 feet setback for the brick mass above. And then the metal top is set back an additional about 10 feet. So there is a lot of stepping happening in the project. I think the last comment about the recessed upper floors, we did study that, dropping down the 6th floor, you step back like the 7th floor is. When we did that, we found that actually it becomes more visible, right? So the height becomes more visible and it's more pronounced. So we felt like only keeping the 7th floor setback actually feels like the building overall becomes shorter because you kind of hide that upper floor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move into board discussion.
I have a question for city staff.
Yeah.
So BD, on your the last recommendation or analysis there on the front there, talking about the hyphens having too much rhythm or too much repetition.
Just too
Explain
much
what
of
you
the
mean.
same. I just want a little compositional hierarchy happening
Are
in
you
there.
talking about the parts where they have the?
Yeah,
green?
the green metalwork where it's the pill shape, for lack of a better phrase, pill shaped. There's some places where the horizontal reads a little stronger than the vertical.
Okay.
And it also just feels a little bit the same, but like a little more
Some
something.
more, you just don't want it to be all the same.
Right, just a little more compositional
Okay.
hierarchy. Yeah. But to me, that's a preliminary thing.
Right, yeah, for sure. I just didn't understand what
Yeah.
you were saying.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll start with my rambling. Well, first, I was here for several of the other versions, and I know, and I underlined what PD said, the review of this submittal should stand on its own, which is absolutely correct, but I still can't forget that what I've seen. So I can't help but compare it to what was previously presented, and it's completely different, 180 degrees improved, so much better. I mean, I think the design direction is great. The massing is very well done. Just the way you handle the parking to basically get rid of 3 levels of parking is fantastic. So just kudos to the design team. I think it's overlooked a little bit, but Christoph mentioned that boardwalk will be very beneficial to the neighborhood to be able to connect east and west. So that's great for the city. So overall, I think the design is very well done, very well thought out. I have a couple of minor comments and they're more preliminary. I think on Calhoun, there's that one section you call it where the terrace is, and Christoph had a sketch, but it looks like you've got this recessed area and behind it is the corridor for the garage. I understand why you don't have a lot of windows, but it's just gonna be really dark and you've got this whole thing set up and he's got a great outdoor space and then you've got this sort of dark loggia almost, and it just doesn't seem like that's gonna be that nice. So I would look at that to the next level. I like the townhouse idea, the southern facade of the, and it's hard for me, the drawings were great, the presentation was very well done. But it's, I guess it's just lacking, but the elevations are about this big, and I never trust perspectives. And so at the preliminary level, it's a big building, but you gotta have elevation so I can see what's going on. If I'm here, I might not be here, but first of all, I had to go look for them, but they're not helpful. So that's okay, but next time. But anyway, back to my original comment, the southern elevation overlooking the lake, which I think is really well done. And I don't know how you're gonna push it back further, as the Preservation Society suggested on the upper part. But I do think thinking through how you detail that, so it does read a little more vertical, be helpful if you're broken it up, but I think in reality, it won't feel as vertical. So I would study that. What else? I like the hyphen portions, call it the hyphen a lot. That's why I was asking. I personally don't want to change it too much, but it can always be studied. I don't know what to tell you about the top. You're going to see this building. It's very unusual, very atypical of Charleston. You're going to see it from everywhere. You're going to see it in the water. You put the mechanical, you got to have it up there, and you just said, I'm going to have a screen. I thought I would have done the same thing. I don't know if that's the best option or not. I mean, it'd be nice. I like how you handle that level. I agree that step back is the way to go. But I kind of wish it was a little more of a really nice top. And I don't know, I don't want you to make it bigger. I don't know what the answer is. So I would just, but yeah, you're gonna see the top. This is gonna be one where you see it from afar. You're gonna come down Lockwood and you're gonna see it. Obviously, you're gonna come over the bridge. So just putting that out there, it's not, again, no mandate. I think it's something to study. And then my last parting thing, I tell you, I ramble. Last thing is, the renderings look great, the design looks great, but none of this is gonna be anything if the detailing is not excellent. That's why I asked about what those materials were, because all of this, I imagine what it ought to be. And if it's not detailed right, it's gonna feel heavy, you're gonna have too many materials, it's not gonna work. So all of the refinement you have in your beautiful rendering got to, in my mind, come through the details. Obviously, that's next level, but just you've got that challenge ahead of you. So anyway, I appreciate the work that the design team's done. I think they've done a great job. I'm done now, James.
So apparently when we took our break a few minutes ago, Eddie stole my notes. I appreciate your commitment to the project, and I truly do agree with what you said, and thank you for your review and comments, and I'm in support of it moving forward.
All right, thanks. Yeah, from my perspective, I don't have the long, drawn out history. So I do get to see it sort of for the first time here. It certainly, is very aware to me that this is a large project. We, certainly are not, just can't forget that. But I think that this design and looking at it, and I have had the time to go back and look at the other one, y'all have done a nice job of breaking it up. And so in general, I am in favor of it the way it is. I like the idea of the townhomes on Halsey, breaking that down, getting rid of some of that apartments and retail space. And so overall, based on where it is today, I am in favor of it from a conceptual standpoint. Obviously, there's a lot of the devil's in the details as we move through the process. So yep, we will move on then. And if anybody has a motion.
I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So the motion on the floor is conceptual approval with board and staff conditions. How do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Yay.
And I'm also yay in favor. Thank you all.
Good work, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, for your successful meeting.